The late summer days were warm, the golden light softening the edges of everything. Emma and Jack had settled into a new rhythm, not quite strangers, but something fragile and undefined. The unspoken feelings between them grew heavier with each passing day. Like a secret waiting to be shared but neither daring to speak aloud, Emma found herself restless. The past, the grief, the uncertainty, it all crowded her thoughts. She walked through the fields, letting the tall cornstalks brush against her fingertips, trying to make sense of the whirlwind inside her heart. Jack was there too, but now his presence felt different, closer, more electric. That night began like many others. Emma was in the kitchen, barefoot and loose-haired, the soft hum of an old record player filling the warm air. A vinyl record spun gently, the crackle of music, blending with the distant chirping of crickets outside. She was making tea, the steam rising in gentle swirls. Jack entered quietly, carrying 2 glasses of sweet tea. The way he moved seemed slower, more deliberate, as if the moment itself was important. He stopped in the doorway and watched her. "You look like your mama," he said softly, almost to himself. "When she used to dance like that in the kitchen." Emma paused, feeling the weight of his words settle over her like a soft blanket. She turned to face him, her eyes meeting his in the dim light. "And you," she said with a playful smile, "still haven't learned to dance." Jack chuckled, a low sound that rumbled in his chest. He stepped closer, closing the small distance between them. "Maybe I just needed the right partner." The music shifted to a slow, gentle song, a melody that seemed made for moments like this. Jack reached out, hesitated for a heartbeat, then took her hand. Emma's breath caught. They moved together awkwardly at first, unsure, as if rediscovering a language they'd forgotten. Her heart raced. His hand was warm, steady. As the song played, their movements grew softer, more natural. The kitchen became a world of its own, a place where time slowed, and nothing else mattered. When the song ended, Jack didn't let go. His eyes searched hers, full of vulnerability and something deeper, something Emma had longed for but feared. "I don't know when it happened," he whispered, "but I can't pretend I don't feel it anymore." Emma's pulse thundered. In her ears, she searched his eyes for doubt or hesitation, but found only truth. "Me neither," she breathed. And then they kissed. It was soft and careful, as if both were afraid to shatter the fragile moment. The world outside the kitchen faded away, the shadows, the past, the weight of judgment. There was only them. That kiss was a beginning and an ending all at once. A promise of something new, but also a farewell to the innocence of their old relationship. Afterwards, they didn't speak much. The silence was not awkward, but full, charged with emotions neither could name aloud. Jack cleared his throat and said, "I should get going. Early start tomorrow." Emma nodded, her heart aching with a mix of joy and fear as she went to bed. That night, her thoughts raced. She thought about how much she had longed for this, to be seen, to be loved in a way that felt real. But she also thought about the line they were crossing, the risks, the uncertainties. Love wasn't simple, was complicated and messy. But for the first time, it felt like it might be worth it. The days following that night were filled with a quiet tension. Jack and Emma were both careful, guarding their feelings, afraid to speak too loudly, too clearly. The world outside their farmhouse might never understand the love growing between them. Emma watched Jack more closely now. Way he looked at her in the mornings when she wasn't expecting it. For he paused before saying her name. The tenderness in his touch when he brushed her hair from her face. But she also saw his pain. One evening, Jack stood on the porch, staring out at the fields, his hands clenched into fists. "I'm not the man you deserve," he said quietly. Emma stepped closer, heartbreaking. "You're the only one I want." He shook his head slowly. "It's not that simple." She took his hand again. "Nothing about this is simple, but I'm willing to try." Looked at her, eyes full of conflict. "You're young, Emma. You have your whole life ahead of you. I'm tied to this place, to the past. She smiled sadly. Maybe that's what makes us work, because we understand each other. For a moment, they stood in the quiet, the night wrapping around them like a protective cloak. Emma realized then that love wasn't about fitting neatly into a mold. It was about two imperfect people daring to hold on even when the world told them they shouldn't. That summer was drawing to a close. But Emma knew something had shifted forever. Jack was no longer just Uncle Jack. He was something more, someone who touched her soul in ways she hadn't imagined. But with that love came questions. What would their future look like? Could they find happiness in a world that might never accept them? The answers were uncertain. But for now, in the quiet of that old farmhouse, beneath the stars and the fading light, Emma and Jack held on to each other. And for the first time in a long time, hope felt real. The crispness of early fall was in the air. The farm was glowing with golden leaves, and the days grew shorter, each one carrying a hint of change. Emma and Jack had spent the summer walking a delicate line between what was and what could be. The night that changed everything was no longer a secret between them. It had blossomed into something real. Something that challenged their understanding of love, family, and themselves. But with the passing of time came new challenges. The outside world waited quietly, judgment, uncertainty. And the fear of what others might say loomed like shadows over their fragile happiness. Emma had been wrestling with her feelings for weeks now, caught between desire and doubt. She loved Jack deeply, but the weight of their unusual bond pressed down on her. What would her friends think? Could she build a future with someone society might never fully accept? And what about Jack? Was he willing to risk everything? Two carried his own burdens. He was older, set in his ways, tied to the farm and the memories of Emma's mother, who had once been the center of their world. He feared losing Emma not just to the world, but to time itself. He was haunted by the question of whether he was doing the right thing, or if he was selfishly holding on to something forbidden. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with pinks and purples, Emma found Jack sitting on the porch, his face shadowed by worry. "Jack," she said softly, taking the seat beside him, "we can't live in fear." He sighed, looking out over the fields. "I know. But it's not just fear. It's reality." Emma reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining like puzzle pieces finally fitting together. "We have to decide. Choose us or walk away." Jack's eyes met hers raw, honest and full of emotion. "I want to choose us, Emma. But I'm scared of what comes next." She smiled gently. "We'll face it together." In the weeks that followed, they talked openly about their hopes, their fears, and their future. They planned small steps forward, how Emma might stay longer, how they could live openly without losing what mattered most. They faced difficult conversations with family and friends. Some were kind, others distant. But through it all, Emma and Jack held tightly to their truth. One rainy afternoon, Emma sat by the window, watching the drops race each other down the glass. Jack joined her with 2 mugs of hot cider. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. Jack shook his head, a small smile playing on his lips. "No, loving you has been the most honest thing I've ever done." Her heart swelled. "Me too." The seasons changed, and with them, Emma and Jack's love deepened. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of doubt and struggle, but it was real and steady. One evening, they sat by the fire. Emma rested her head on Jack's shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" He asked. "For seeing me. For loving me. For being my home." Jack kissed her forehead, his voice thick with emotion. "You're my heart, Emma. Always have been." They held each other close, knowing that love, in its purest form, is about choosing one another every day despite the challenges. Despite the unknown, Emma's return to Iowa had been meant as a temporary refuge, a way to heal. But it had become so much more. She had found love where she least expected it. A love that defied expectations and broke all the rules she thought she had to follow. Jack was no longer just her uncle or her mother's friend. He was her partner, her confidant, her future, and together they were ready to face whatever came next. Emma Cartwright hadn't been back to Iowa in over 3 years. Seattle had swallowed her whole, the noise, the pace, the loneliness. At first it had been exciting. New job, new city, new life. She had left behind everything small town, everything simple, including him. But when her mother passed away suddenly that spring, something inside Emma broke open. It wasn't just grief, it was exhaustion. She felt like a balloon someone had let go of, floating, untethered, unsure of where to land. The apartment in Seattle felt too cold, the city too fast. She needed something familiar, something that didn't expect anything from her. That something was Jack. He wasn't her real uncle, though everyone in town called him that. He was her mother's best friend since childhood. When Emma was just a little girl, Jack had been around more than her own father. He taught her how to ride a bike, took her fishing, danced with her at prom because her date canceled last minute. He had always been there, quiet, strong, never asking for anything in return. Emma had always called him Uncle Jack. But deep down, she had always known he was more than just that. He wasn't family by blood, but by something else. Loyalty, history, comfort. So, when she stepped off the bus that warm June afternoon, bag in hand and heart aching, she knew she was walking toward a part of her past she wasn't ready to let go of. The farmhouse looked the same. Its porch still creaked in that one spot near the steps. The wind moved through the tall cornfields just like it used to. And there he was, Jack, standing on the porch with his arms folded, a dish towel over one shoulder and a half smile on his face. He looked older, but in a good way, like someone who had aged, honestly, lines around his eyes from squinting into the sun. Calloused hands that still held steady, and those deep-set eyes that always made her feel safe. But this time, something felt different. "Emma," he said, like he was saying her name for the first time in years. "You're not a kid anymore." She smiled, her chest tightening. "Neither are you." There was a moment, just one, but it stretched too long to ignore. His eyes lingered, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but in a way that made her feel seen, as a woman, not a niece. Not a memory. Someone real. Jack helped her carry her bag inside, and she stepped into the house she remembered like a second skin. The smell of pine cleaner, the sound of the old ceiling fan. Her mother's favorite quilt still folded over the back of the couch. Nothing had changed and yet everything had. "I didn't touch her room," Jack said quietly, nodding toward the closed door down the hall. "Didn't feel right?" Emma swallowed hard. "Thank you." He gave her a soft nod and gestured to the guest room. "You can stay as long as you need." She didn't know how long that would be. A week? Month? Maybe forever. That night, she sat on the porch swing, watching the stars come out, a glass of sweet tea in her hand. Jack joined her, like he used to, sitting beside her in silence. "Still can't believe she's gone?" Emma whispered. Jack sighed. "Me neither. She was one of a kind." They didn't say much after that. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was full of memory, full of things unsaid. As the crickets chirped and the night settled around them, Emma found herself stealing a glance at him, at the way his hands rested on his knees, at the way his eyes reflected the porch light. He looked tired but steady, familiar but changed. She remembered something her mother once said when she was a teenager. "Jack has a good heart, the kind women forget to notice until it's too late." Hadn't understood that back then. Now, she wondered if she was starting to. The next morning, Emma woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. Jack was already up, flipping pancakes in the kitchen like it was just another Sunday. "I figured you could use something warm," Kay said, placing a plate in front of her. She smiled. You always made breakfast when Mom got sad. Kay nodded. Eyes soft, old habits. They sat and ate in quiet comfort. The kind you only share with someone who knows your past. As the days passed, a rhythm began. Emma cleaned the house, fixed up her mom's old garden, and helped Jack with small chores around the farm. He worked during the day, came home tired, and they'd share dinner stories. And sometimes just silence. But underneath it all, something unspoken lingered. A growing awareness. Sometimes it was a glance that lasted too long. Other times it was the way his hand brushed hers when passing a coffee mug. Nothing big, nothing obvious, but enough to make Emma lie awake at night, wondering what she was feeling and if he felt it. To Dot, it confused her. This man Jack had been like a father figure, a protector. But now, he felt like something else, something closer, something more dangerous. She told herself it was just emotions, grief, memory. But the heart has a way of noticing things the mind tries to ignore. And Emma's heart was beginning to whisper a question. She didn't yet have the courage to answer. What if I never really saw him before now? After the first few days of her return, Emma began to settle into the slow, familiar pace of life on the farm. The sun rose early, painting the sky soft shades of pink and orange. And Jack was always the first up, already outside by the time she pulled on her boots. Emma found comfort in the simple routine, sweeping the porch, tending to the garden where wildflowers were starting to bloom, and cooking meals just like her mom used to make. But what surprised her most was how much Jack was a part of everything, even in silence. They moved around each other with a quiet understanding. Jack never pressured her to talk about the past or the pain she carried. Instead, he offered company. Without words of presence that felt steady and warm. There was a gentle calm about him, like the kind of quiet that stretches between two people who share a long history. Some afternoons, when the summer breeze was soft and the sun was high, Emma would find herself watching him from the kitchen window. He would be fixing a fence post or stacking firewood, his strong arms moving with practiced ease, sweat glistening on his forehead. There was something in the way he carried himself that pulled at her, a mix of strength and vulnerability. She hadn't noticed before. Jack was watching her too, though with more care now. The way his eyes flicked to her when he thought she wasn't looking, the small, unguarded smile when she caught his gaze, was like they were both feeling something new but unsure how to say it aloud. One afternoon, after a long day of work, they sat together on the porch steps with mugs of coffee, the silence between them heavy but comfortable. Emma was wrapped in one of her mother's old sweaters, the fabric soft and worn from years of use. Jack looked at her as if trying to memorize every detail: her face, the way her hair caught the sunlight, the slight curve of her lips as she sipped her drink. "I didn't realize how much I missed this," Emma said quietly, her voice barely above the wind. Jack nodded slowly. "Me neither." Their conversation didn't need to go deeper. Sometimes it was enough to just be there, to feel the presence of someone who understood your pain without needing to fix it. As the summer days grew longer, the nights became their own world. Emma would read by the window while Jack worked on old tools or repaired the barn. Often she'd catch him stealing glances her way, eyes full of something tender yet hesitant. There was a new kind of electricity between them, a quiet longing that neither wanted to admit. One evening, after a particularly long day, a storm rolled in. The thunder rumbled low and rain began to patter against the windows. The power flickered and then went out completely, leaving the house cloaked in darkness. Jack lit candles, their warm light casting soft shadows on the walls. Emma wrapped herself in a blanket and sat close to him on the couch. The storm outside was fierce, but inside there was only the quiet crackle of rain and the steady beat of their hearts. Jack handed her a cup of tea. And their fingers brushed. It was a small touch, but it sent a spark through her. She looked up, meeting his eyes, and for a moment everything else disappeared. The loss, the grief, the years apart. There was only this moment, fragile and perfect. I missed this, Emma whispered. Jack's voice was gentle, almost a confession. So did I. They didn't say more. The night wrapped around them like a blanket. And though the storm raged on outside, inside the house was calm and safe. But as Emma lay in bed that night, the silence was loud with questions. Was this just the comfort of old friendship? Or was it something deeper, something that had quietly grown while she wasn't looking? She thought about the way Jack had looked at her. Not like an uncle, not like family, but like a man who was seeing her for the first time. That scared her, because what if he felt the same? Days turned into weeks, and the summer began to slip away with the fading light. Emma and Jack spent more time together, their conversations growing richer and more personal. They shared memories of Emma's mother, her laughter, her stubbornness, her love for both of them. In those moments, they weren't just caretaker and child or friends. There were two people connected by a deep and complicated love. Emma found herself drawn to Jack in ways she didn't expect. She noticed the way his eyes softened when he looked at her, the subtle tension in his voice when he spoke. At night, she would replay their moments together, the quiet talks on the porch, the shared meals, the brush of hands when passing plates. She wondered if he was feeling the same things she was feeling, the slow burn of attraction, a pull of something, forbidden yet undeniable.